Welcome back to part 2, plant friends. Let's get into this plant tour. This shelf is from IKEA. I don't think they offer it anymore, but man, it's been a great shelf. Perfect to store so many plants. So on this shelf, a majority of them are Episcias, the African violets, some orchids, and this tortum. The tortum really enjoys this spot. Ever since I brought it home, I just tucked it in this corner and it's been flourishing. They say that these require a totem pole and would actually thrive on a totem pole. I'm going to keep it off the totem pole as long as possible because these can get quite huge. And as you can see, I don't have a lot of space for plants. Now there are some Episcias tucked in here. And they're pretty much vining and scrambling throughout this top shelf. I don't disturb the shelf at all. I just leave them and let them do what they need to do. Look at this big leaf. I think this is one of those Jim's patches variety. I don't even remember the name of that one. But over here, this one is Jim's, this one's Jim's patches. So they've got a bunch of Jim patches varieties going on with these Episcias. So I've got 2 or 3 of them in this area. Now we also have the Episcia Pink Acajou. And this one's vining quite nicely. A lot of beautiful vines intermingling. I kind of like this with these Episcias. Now this big beauty, nice hanging basket that I picked up at Valleyview. Look at the little flower. It's very nice. Now back here, I'm not sure of the name on this one, but it has the lovely flowers with the most beautiful red leaves. Now I find that the Episcias, they do require a lot of water. I don't let them dry out for too long before watering. Something to be mindful of when you get the Episcias is that they need to stay evenly moist. Now this one is the Episcia Pink Smoke. I've wanted this one in my collection for a very long time. At first I would think this one would be a difficult Hoya Episcia to grow, but it's actually quite low maintenance. I think the trick is with this wick and water in the bottom. I really need to change that water. But I find that these like to stay moist, so I keep them nice and moist, always monitoring the glass vase to make sure that there's some water in the bottom. They're thirsty little guys. I also have some African violets over here. I don't know the name for these, but I picked it up at one of those African violet shows. A bit of variegation on these leaves, and this one also has variegation as well. These are the miniature varieties, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. Tucked in between, there's another African violet right here. Let me be very careful getting this one out. I find that it tends to grow towards the light, so every so often I'll come by and turn these. This one has the most magnificent flowers, some humongous flowers that are nice and ruffly. I'll insert a picture for you if I've got one. I should find one on my Instagram. Make sure I'm not crushing the Ipiscia. Now back here, this African violet is so unusual. Take a screenshot of the name, because when you see the flower, I'm sure you're going to want to have one of these in your collection. Yes, plant friends, look at that. They're interesting flowers, aren't they? Mainly green. Sometimes they'll pink up a little bit, have a little bit of a pink hue, but they're mainly green with the flower ruffles and so many flower petals. You can see this one that's closer to the light has a bit of pink to the flower. What a little darling. These African violets, there's something intriguing about them. You can find something that just meets your flowering needs, leaf foliage needs. There's something for everyone in the African violets. Let's see if we can turn this a little bit. Okay, I think that's good. Got them tucked in there. And try not to squish the Ipiscia pink smoke. Down here we've got more Ipiscias and more African violets. Back here we've got Scarlet Hoya. And this one's lovely with her blooms. It's an intense red against these white and green leaves. You can see one of the spent flower blooms here. It's a beautiful contrast to the leaves, just wonderful. We've got watermelon snow, and that comes out pure white on the new leaves and eventually fade out to a nice freckled green and white variegation. Look at the flowers. Sometimes you can get a hint of pink on the flowers, but I think with being under grow light, that really affects how the flowers look. Now we've got Ipiscia Cleopatra. Cleopatra is also very gorgeous. And I like that they put off these little stolons or little offsets. So that's something that I can put in soil and propagate. Over here we've got Pink Dreams. Pink Dreams is also gorgeous. Look at that leaf. These Ipiscias are so amazing. It makes you want to collect them, collect all of them. Now this beauty is Rose Bouquet. And this is one of my favorite African violets. Pink ruffly flowers and variegated leaves. What more can you ask for? Let's get her in a good spot. I think that's good, and then she'll grow towards the leaf. Now down here we're getting to more of the orchids, but we'll stop off with this air plant, the Xerographica. One of my favorites. Now this one's looking like it could use some water. You'll find that when your air plant is thirsty, that's when it tends to curl up quite a bit. So I'll dunk this in water for a little bit, and to dry it out, I place these upside down so that the cups will drain out and dry out. You don't want any water sitting in the center cup of the air plants. That could rot the air plant. There's a few. Let's tuck this one right here. Look at this air plant. It's throwing off a little baby. And you'll find that happens quite a bit with the air plants. Once they flower, the mother plant slowly dies, and then they put off little babies. And this one also has a spent flower spike. And then there's a little baby emerging down below. It's just cool to have a little bit of air plants tucked in the mix. Now this little beauty, also picked up at one of those African violets shows. I love the flower. The Caleria Designers Halloween. The flower is so pretty. I was so drawn to this one. And ever since I brought this home, it's been flowering. It seems to enjoy the grow light, and I keep the soil slightly moist, so I don't allow that one to dry out. Now for orchids, over here we've got Phalaenopsis Germain Vincent. Look at the parents, Speciosa and Violacea. So this one's really fragrant and very pretty blooms. My blooms look more like a Violacea, which I really enjoy. It has a number of flower spike. I think this one's bloomed for me every year since I've had it in my collection. And this one is the Hieroglyphica. Hieroglyphica's got a little pup. That's nice to see. Now, I don't like removing the little pups until they're fully grown. They say to remove when they have got sets of twos, so 2 roots and 2 leaves. She's got 2 roots but only 1 leaf, so she's not ready to be removed yet from the mother plant. Now this one, the leaves are quite thin. So I've got bark in the bottom, orchid bark, a bit of charcoal and perlite, but on the top I've got some sphagnum moss to maintain more humidity in the pot. Now this little guy over here, it's an interesting cross. I don't think it's available that a lot on the market anymore. KS Appy Eagle by Phalaenopsis LD Bear King. I'll insert the picture. Absolutely stunning picture. And nice thick leaves on this one. There's also a little root at the bottom, so I don't want to move that. I don't want to rip the roots. Now this Phalaenopsis, I picked this one up at an orchid show as well many years ago. Phalaenopsis Joy Spring Canary, Phal Chinlong, Green Trekkie Green. I'm not sure if I still have a picture of this one. Maybe on my Instagram I'll insert it. Desperately need to repot this one. It's practically crawling out of the pot. Fantastic root system, but it needs a repotting very soon. Now on this bottom shelf, I've got some Bellinas. This one's Bellina Country Orchard and Bellina Red Apple. One of the things about these Bellinas that I've discovered over the years that they require a lot of water, a lot more water than you would think. So I water this about every 2 days. I also have some air plants tucked in here. They're potted up in bark, chunky sponge rock. Now back here I also have some African violets and Epischia. There's chocolate velour. And this one over here, Canary Little Sweetheart. It's nice. It has nicely variegated leaves and that purple flower. We've got a calumnia, calumnia and a permalina. Yeah, little darlings, little seedlings. Another calumnia. Calumnias are related to the lipstick plant. And from what I understand, they like a cool winter temperature, at least fall temperature, to set blooms. Now this one, Tabasco Tex, lovely blooming orchid. You need to clean the leaves, and there's roots coming out at the bottom. It's very happy. I actually watered this not too long ago. Actually today I watered it. So the root system's looking very nice. This orchid is a no ID. I think I picked this one up at Calisantes. I think back in December I picked this one up. Really beautiful blooms. I'll insert. And this beauty, the leaves are humongous. I've lost the tag for this one. If I can find it, I'll insert it for you. Really nice orchid. We've got a new spike coming, and there's a few spikes tucked in. Actually just 2 spikes that's left on this one, so I'm hoping this will extend and bloom, but maybe we'll get a bloom later on in the summer on that. Beautiful, mixed with Gigantea, so it's got those humongous leaves. And down here I've got a Hoya tucked in here. It's the Hoya Kenya Komoriana. I find that this one likes it very humid, so I've got sort of a little terrarium set up for it, and it seems to enjoy it. The leaves are looking nice and healthy and very green, nice and lush. So over here, these plants get a lot of sunlight. So in the morning, I'll have the shades closed so that they're not getting that direct, intense sun. But to make up, I have the grow lights, and the grow lights seem to work for these beauties. These are plants that would scorch in direct sunlight, so it's a wonderful setup for them. Now over here, I've got more plants. In the box, I've got the plants that like it moist. So I've got my Cailecistas here. There's a little leaf emerging. That's really nice to see. So the Cailecista is here. We've got the Hoya imbricata, 2 Cailecistas, and these flowered for me. Oh, lovely blooms on them. They're fairly low maintenance orchids, and I like to put my watering jug right here and use a turkey baster, and I just sprinkle a little bit of water on them every day. They require watering every day, so if you're planning on getting one of these, you've got to be more attentive with these orchids. Now the Hoya imbricata desperately needs a repotting. The media is getting a bit stale. It's sphagnum moss. I don't think the older leaves are enjoying this media much. And she's got some new leaves. I should get a larger totem pole for this plant and pull it out of the pot. That would make for a nice video to do a repotting. Now this one, I got at Calisantes, and look at how much it's grown. It's in the bromeliad family. It's the Crypthanthus, and it was only $3 then. Not a bad deal, and look at the color. So nice and vibrant. Now up here, I've got the Hoya obscura, and look at this. It actually is in flower. Look at those little flowers. They're so cute. There's 2 spikes on this plant that's working on buds, 2 peduncles There's a third peduncle, no buds on that peduncle. Wow, this is so nice to see. It's a nice butter yellow. And that's the Hoya obscura. I've not repotted this since I acquired it. I have to say that it's in the same nursery pot that it was propagated in, but it hasn't suffered any setback. It's actually thrived in that media. Now here I've got a Phalaenopsis gigantea, and this gigantea has bloomed a number of times. It has some flower spikes here. And is there a flower spike? There might be another flower spike tucked in back here, but I don't want to disturb this too much. This is a new leaf that it started working on this year. Leaf is still nice and soft. I think this one is a heavy feeder because the leaf from last year was much smaller, and I think that indicates that I need to feed this plant a little bit more to get it to have those big pendulous leaves. We've got the Hoya obovata variegata, an easy Hoya to bloom. It's bloomed for me quite a few times. We've got some old peduncles right here. It actually bloomed from this peduncle back in January, and I see a new peduncle. Now this new leaf has reverted. I'll wait to see what the peduncle looks like and what these two new leaves look like before doing a quick chop right here. I might go down below this variegated leaf just to encourage more variegation. Although the reverted leaf looks very nice, I want to keep this plant as a variegated Hoya obovata variegata. Here's another Phalaenopsis gigantea. You might remember this one that was really beaten up badly, and I picked it up at the Orchid show for a really good price. Was it like $25 or $35? The new leaf that emerged this spring. It's still soft, so it hasn't hardened off yet. This older leaf came with it, and this leaf came in last year. Very nice. Lots of active growths on this one. Now I'm running out of space, so I've got this orchid sitting right on top of the media for the Gigantea. And it's the Phalaenopsis London Mix Zebra 823. The bloom is just spent. I'll insert a picture. It's a wonderful orchid. I really like the blooms of these mixed zebra. There's something about them. They're very stunning. I definitely recommend this one if you're collecting an orchid. And it has 3 flower spike. This one's a new spike, so it would be nice if all 3 spikes would bloom sometime this summer. Now up here I've got the Lactea White Ghost. This one's grown a lot. When I purchased it, it was probably about this high, about right here. So it's put on this amount of growth. I think before the pandemic I purchased it. So it's been a while, maybe 5 years. And I've had it in this windowsill, just enjoying that bright sunlight. It's right behind the window casing, so it's getting some shade as well as filtered light. And it seems to like that. Look at all those active grow tips. Now just in front of the Lactea White Ghost, we've got this Phalaenopsis that I purchased at the Toronto Plant Expo last year. It's a no ID. The flower is amazing. I really love it. And look at this leaf. The new leaf is gigantic. Now I find that it requires a lot of water. If I don't water it, well, last year I didn't water it as much. It was new to my collection. So the new leaf crinkled up from not enough watering. So this year I made sure I gave it lots of water. It's also in one of those holy pots. So it's worked out great. A lot of water, but it dries out very quickly. So I'm not concerned about root rot on this orchid. And look at that, it's working on 2 flower spikes. Just wonderful. I can't wait for this one to bloom with these wonderful leaves and beautiful flower. It's going to be a spectacular show. Now in this basket, I've got so many little goodies tucked in here. This Cattleya has been on my wish list for a while, so when I saw this one popped up at orchidmart.ca, I had to get it. It's the amazing Thailand. The flower on this one is supposed to be really beautiful. Actually, it's really beautiful. And this one is blooming size and working on a new little pseudo bulb down below. Let's see if we can get a close-up of that for you. Yeah, you can see the little pseudo bulb and nice root system. When it arrived, it was bare rooted. So I'm impressed to see how many roots it's put on and working on that nice little pseudo bulb. I can't wait for it to bloom. Now over here, I've got a Phalaenopsis Sogo Vivian. And it's a variegated orchid. Normally when these orchids are in bloom, I'd put them in the living room, but I've got a few orchids in bloom in the living room right now. So this one has to be in my bedroom, tucked in the little plastic bin. Just beautiful variegated leaves, I love that. Here's a Maxillaria. And Maxillaria profestale. It's a Maxillaria. And nice little pseudobulbs. These little pseudobulbs were tiny when I purchased this orchid. And the older pseudobulbs are a little bit shriveled. You know what? This one requires a lot of water. And I think I see a new pseudobulb emerging way back there. So that's nice. I'm looking forward to that and the blooms. I also have the Maxillaria tenafolia in here, which I picked up from orchidmart.ca. Some new growth. That's really nice. The older pseudobulbs were a bit shriveled, and the new pseudobulbs are nice and plump, so that's a good sign. We've got a Psychopsis. Now this Psychopsis I purchased from Crystal Star, and I've split this one, given it to a planty friend. Many say that never to disturb the roots of the Psychopsis, but I find that they're okay being disturbed. What's most important with the Psychopsis is that they like a lot of water. I keep this one sopping wet. It does not like to dry out. If it dries out, then the little flower buds, they dry up and it doesn't flower. As long as you keep it moist, it will continue to push out a flower spike or flower buds. This spike has been in bloom for a couple of years now. Now there is a second Psychopsis right here, and this one is the Psychopsis with the triple lip, triple labello. So it's that nice ruffly Psychopsis. It's so nice. It's working on a flower bud. So this is the time when you don't want this to dry out at all. So you can see that it's very wet. Lots of algae. Yeah, so it's pretty much like a swamp down here. And I keep it nice and close to the window. That's another thing about this Psychopsis, is that it likes it bright. Practically full sun for this one, and kept sopping wet. The older pseudobulb leaf is dying off, which is expected. That's good. And these two pseudobulbs, they've grown since I've chopped it in two. Now down below, I've got a peperomia. And I'm surprised that this one's doing well in my collection. Red Luna was $4 from Calisanti. I'm very happy about that. Now one of the things that I use for feed is Super Thrive. I use a little bit of Super Thrive and a little bit of Fox Farm Tiger Bloom in every feeding. And that seems to work well for the plants. Now this orchid, it's Phalaenopsis Spring Canary Joy. Oh, it's a beautiful yellow orchid. Nice growth on it. I've had it for a number of years. And I got this one from Crystal Star. Now back here, I've got the Haworthia bowl. I've got a few Haworthias tucked in here, and they're quite happy. Look at how beautiful this one is. It also throws off little pups. Every once in a while, I'll cut a pup off because the pot can get quite full. It has the spent flower spikes, and it's working on a little flower spike right here. It's so nice. A few different types of Haworthias. I normally put this one out on the balcony, but I've decided not to put it out on the balcony this year. The plants can get quite stressed from the sun stressing, and I find that these Haworthias like it bright, but not direct sun. We've got a Phalaenopsis right here. This one is Phalaenopsis Yophon Boss. It's working on a beautiful flower spike. I can't wait for some lovely blooms on this. Really large leaves. I think there's Gigantea in its DNA. Look at the media. This one I've actually have potted up with Coco Coir. Not a media that I use a lot for my orchids, but this one has really enjoyed it. It's bloomed for me a number of times over the years. Now down here I've got some Hoyas. We've got the Hoya Memoria. Looking very nice, some nice tendrils on this Hoya Memoria. And what do we have here? This one's Hoya Viola. Tag stuck in there. Hoya Viola is doing really good. It has a nice tendril going. A low maintenance Hoya. A matter of fact, I've downgraded my Hoyas to only low maintenance Hoyas. I'm not sure if I'll be adding any more to my collection. I find that my home is too bright and too sunny for Hoyas. They prefer bright shade, and they do get quite big. This one is Hoya CV Jennifer. It's a big leaf Hoya. Lovely variegation or veination on the leaves. I like the veins. I like that the leaves are nice and big. Very thick leaves on this Hoya. And this is one of those Hoyas that does not mind it bright, because I've got directly in the south facing window and it seems to be doing fine. Now this beauty is the Hoya Ilejorum. This one's bloomed for me before, I think a couple of times. It's also in the south facing window. It's been with me for a number of years now and doing well, so it's one that I've kept in my collection. Any Hoyas that you've seen before and you don't see them now, I've given them away. It's a Hoya that does not like my environment, and I find that now, since I've been very busy, I have to keep plants that thrive with the type of care that I'm able to offer. So in this window, the plants are getting full sun in the morning, and it's sunny until about noon, sometimes around 1 p.m., depending on the season. Here's a Hoya compacta, and this one lives on the windowsill. Lots of growth on this one, and many tendrils. I find that the Hoyas put on the most growth in the spring season and the summer. In the winter, it tends to sleep quite a bit. We've got the Ripsalis paradoxa. And look at this beauty. This one's gotten quite heavy and it's grown a lot. It's practically all roots in this pot. I need to figure out something to do, figure out what to do with this. It needs to be repotted, but into a hanging basket, that's going to be really heavy. I need a humongous hanging basket. So I'm thinking I should cut this back. I just can't handle such a lush growing plant. Something's got to be done with it. Now back here I've got my Euphorbia millii. It's variegated. I tried putting this one out on the balcony. It did not like it at all. It actually scorched the leaves and the plant was in decline, so I moved it back. And there's a few more of those Dorstinias. Yes, more weeds. The Euphorbia millii is just beautiful and variegated, and it's grown a lot for me over the years. It's quite a large plant. The plants that are outside, this is where I keep them over the winter on the windowsill. So the succulents and the cactus, they get a lot of bright light when they're inside over the winter. Both my bedroom and living room has that windowsill, so it's quite handy to keep the plants inside over the winter. Now in this IKEA Milsbo cabinet, I've got orchids, some succulents, begonia and peperomia, and a Hoya. Now this little gem, I'm trying it out. It's Masonia. Interesting. The initial leaf that it came with died back, and I thought this plant had died, but a new leaf has emerged. It's quite a learning experience for me, and I'm just going to enjoy growing this plant until it matures. It's still a baby. I think it's about 5 years away from maturity. Now over here I've got a variegated moonstone, and I've chopped this back to encourage branching, and look at that, it's doing it. Nice little variegated plant. Now these orchids, they're all getting grow light for about 12 hours each day. Back here we've got the Violacea indigo. Working on a spike. And pretty much all the orchids on this shelf have suffered from spider mite damage. Whenever it gets too dry, that's when I find the spider mites come out. This orchid's a no ID from, it's either from Mississauga Greenhouse or Calisantes. This little beauty. I don't think this orchid has bloomed for me. Gigantea by Matuo-san. Hasn't bloomed yet, but wonderful root system. Really nice, lovely roots on this plant. Over here, yes, this beauty has bloomed. It's the Phalaenopsis Harjin Fancy. Lovely red blooms. And back here we've got Princess Kaiolani. Princess Kaiolani suffered the most with the spider mites. You can see from her leaves. I've wiped her down with the Clorox wipe and sprayed her down with insecticidal soap, and that took care of it, so I'm hoping for new leaves. My Phalaenopsis Michelitzii is Tetraspis by Michelitzii, also suffered from the spider mite infestation. The new leaves are looking much better. She's got a spike and a bud slowly emerging. And this one is Tetraspis green. This one I picked up from orchidmart.ca. I see some roots there. Okay, nice roots tips. This is why I like these plastic pots. It allows me to see the roots. And it lets me know if the orchid needs watering. Like I can see in the pot right now that these are well hydrated. A little bit of water coming out of this one. The roots are looking nice and green. I'll just put it on the side to drain a little bit. I also have some Tolumnias. Tolumnia Gyrac Flyer Lady in red. These I picked up from orchidmart.ca and one of their pre-orders. And they were fairly inexpensive too. I've got 3 Tolumnias. Now, along with the amazing Thailand, they had the amazing Thailand Rainbow. And I purchased 1 seedling. And when I got the package, they'd actually put 3 seedlings together. I guess it was sort of like an insurance in case the plant doesn't make it. At least one of the if one seedling didn't make it, at least 1 out of the 3 would. I've separated them and crossing my fingers that all 3 will flourish. Right here I've got the Sedaria japonica. Now I've read that the Sedaria japonica likes a winter rest, so in the winter I kept it cool and on the dry side. Now that it's spring, look, she's giving a lot of new roots, so that's a good sign. There's some roots at the bottom. You know what, at first I was a bit apprehensive about this mounted pot situation, but it actually works. So I'm continuing with the theme of mountain, keeping her the way she is. She's happy, and I just love that there's some roots coming out on this. Let's hope we'll get flower spikes. Now this beauty has been in my collection for about 6 years with no blooms. I have to say thank you to the planty friend that mentions that this likes more humidity. So what I did was mist it. And I started misting it quite a bit in December. And just a couple of months later, we've got blooms. So exciting. And she's bloomed twice already. And now we've got 3 flowers, and the grow tip is active. It's so nice. It's definitely worth the wait. All these years this plant has been working on roots and leaves. So now that she's in bloom, she's just giving me flower after flower. Back here we've got the Phalaenopsis Tinshin Fly Eagle. Another lovely orchid. Nice thick robust leaves, and it's giving a spike, and it's also branching. I find that's the thing that it does. It all branches on its spike quite often. Oh, over here I've got a Hoya that I recently picked up, Hoya sportioides. And this one I picked it up from the Ontario Plant Show. I have no intentions on repotting this anytime soon. I'm gonna let it acclimate to its new home. And when I see a lot of roots in the pot, when it's pot bounded, that's when I will repot this. I also understand that it likes it moist. So I'll need to monitor this one to make sure that the media is moist, and I also understand that it likes a little bit more humidity. So I'm going to keep it in its current setup for a while and see how that works. We've got another Bellina. Bellina is my favorite orchid plant, friends. That's why I've named my channel Life of Bellina, as well as my Instagram. I just love the blooms on these orchids. Now this is Phalaenopsis Bellina Joy Taiwan. Lovely bloom on this. I'm just in love with those Bellina blooms. Okay, good root system on there. It's potted up with charcoal, orchid bark, and a bit of sphagnum moss. Back here is the Phalaenopsis Sweet Memory, or Leodoro. Another lovely orchid. I love the big, beautiful blooms. We've got some leaves falling at the bottom, and that's expected. The Hoyas tend to drop their leaves. The orchids, pardon me, tend to drop their leaves. Look at those roots. So nice and happy. And you can see this one also suffered from a bit of spider mite damage. But the new leaf, that's looking better. A little spot there, but overall 99.9% of the leaf is spotless. Up here is another Bellina, and this one's the Bellina fire type. The flower on this one has the symbol of, I believe it's either Mandarin or Cantonese, the word for fire. That's what this flower looks like, the same shape. So that's shelf, we've got it covered. Now let's go down below. Back here we've got Bulbophyllum, Elizabeth and Buckleberry. I find that Bulbophyllums like it moist, and when I had this potted up, it was declining. So I've put it into a glass jar. Initially I had a plastic over the top to keep the humidity, and that helped. It produced a new leaf. So I'm continuing with the glass container and watching for one more leaf. Once it's established nicely, then I'll pull it out and pot it up into a proper pot. But for now, it's working in the glass with the sphagnum moss. Here's another Cornucervi. This is Cornucervi flava. Wonderful blooms on this one. It's been blooming ever since I purchased this one at the Orchid show. Now this little tray's got a few orchids in here. We've got a mini mark and Phalaenopsis Aphrodite. Also suffered a bit of spider mite. Those can be quite vicious if you're not on top of the maintenance of your plants. You gotta check your plants daily. This one's Promania xanthina. I'm not sure how to get this one to bloom. It's putting on nice new growth. So that's good. Probably needs a repotting soon. The older pseudobulbs have died back, thinking I could repot it, so these pseudobulbs are touching some sort of media. Here's another mini mark. This one I picked up at the Orchid show this year, and it was a good price. I think it was either $20 or $30 for a mini mark, so I thought I couldn't go wrong with adding one more to my collection. Here's 3 orchids in one pot. We've got Phalaenopsis equestris. Look at those mottled leaves. A beautiful orchid. Now these with the mottled leaf, they're no ID. This one I purchased at Mississauga Greenhouse, and the one in the back, also a no ID. I purchased this one at Calisantes. I just thought it would be wonderful to have 3 mottled leaf orchids in one pot. Lovely if all could bloom at once, or if they bloom sequentially one after the other. I'm happy with that too. I've got the Phalaenopsis schilleriana. It was working on a flower spike, and the flower spike has died. It's just dried up on me. And it's pretty much, that's the relationship between me and schilleriana. This is the longest I've had a schilleria in my collection. I think I've had this one for about 5, maybe 6 years, and it's bloomed once for me. And this is I think this is the 3rd schilleriana that I've collected, so this one's survived 5 years. I'm quite happy with that. Let's hope we can get a bloom next year, because I don't think we're getting anything this year with that dried up spike. We've got the Cattleya schilleriana. And if you've watched my unboxing video of this one, I thought this one was a goner when I first received it. Had no roots, really shriveled, and it's flourished. We've got 3 new growths that's fully grown and a new one on the way. The root system looks great. And And I keep this one closer to the window on this side where it's a little bit more bright. Although I've got the grow light going 12 hours a day, I find when it gets a little bit of direct sun, that one likes it. Anthurium villanorum. This one I purchased at Vermeer's. The price on there was $16 at the time. This one's a new leaf, looking very good. A low maintenance plant. I like that I can just put it on the shelf and not worry about it. I do keep it moist, however. Now down on this bottom shelf, we'll start off with these orchids over here. What's the name on this one? It's Phalaenopsis Joy Fairy Tale. I've got 2 in 1 pot. You know, plant friends, when you love an orchid and you've waited a long time to find it, you've got to buy 2. And I find that the flowers are different on them, slightly different. One's a little bit more purple, one's a little bit more pink. Now back here, we've got the pinguiculas. And these could use a little bit more water. I like having water in the tray. These like their feet very wet. So it's definitely time to top up the water in this tray. And they're low maintenance. We've got the actually it's a Mandula, not a Phalaenopsis Mandula. We've got the Mandula pothos here. It's so cute. I like the variegation on the leaves. I've cut this back a few times and shared it with friends. That's why the leaves are a little bit tiny on this one. It's such a beautiful one, and I love the genetics. The variegation is so pretty, so I've had to share it. In the back, we've got the vanilla orchid. This one's the variegated vanilla orchid. It likes it bright and it likes it moist. And it's a small moss pole, but what I've been doing is just wrapping the orchid around on the moss pole as it grows. I'm trying to keep it as compact as possible. I know that these need to be about 50 feet long before they bloom, so I don't think I'll have any blooms anytime soon. I just have to enjoy the foliage. Back here is a Maxillaria, and this one is the Maxillaria variabilis. Yes. Now this one I recently picked up from Crystal Star? Yes, Crystal Star Nursery. So much growth at the Toronto Flower Market. That's right. That's where I grabbed this beauty. It had beautiful yellow flowers. It definitely needs a repotting. So many tiny roots. I'm thinking this one likes it moist. When I see roots like that, I'm thinking it's a water-loving plant. And let's take a look at this one. Actually, let's pull it out. It's the Lupus grassa. It's another orchid. It's a new one for me. I picked up at an orchid show maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Maybe could use a repotting. It hasn't bloomed since. Some yellow leaves, which are expected for older pseudobulbs, but I do see a new pseudobulb right here. As long as I've got a new pseudobulb, I'm happy. As I go along, I slowly learn to care for these plants, so I'm not in a rush to have blooms. And this one is a jewel orchid. Lots of new growth on this one. I'm thinking there's about 3 new growths on this since bringing it home. So that's nice to see. I've never had luck with the jewel orchids, but now that now I've learned that they like it moist, so I've been keeping it moist, and that's really paying off. Back here, let's see what this is. Cattleya Tangerine Fire Mini Sun. Yes, this one is gorgeous. These mini Cattleyas have caught my eye. I really enjoy them. It bloomed for me this year. I did get a bloom, the first bloom after taking it home, and it's working on a new Pseudo bulb, so that's great. Freshly watered. I find that I keep this one on the moist side, and that's been working for me. Here I've got a second Schilleriana. This one I picked up from orchidmart.ca. This one's the silver round leaf variety. More silver. We've got a round leaf and a long leaf. It's still a little baby, so I don't expect any spikes anytime soon. So we'll just keep it back here and keep it happy for the next couple of years. This peperomia was interesting. When I picked this one up from Calisanti, I thought this one was a really cool gem for only $3. I just love the way it grows. Now I find that it leads to it. I find that it does like a lot of light. If I don't give it enough light, then it starts to stretch. As you can see how much space there is between the leaves right there. Enough light, then it doesn't stretch. And look at all those little pups that it's pushing out at the bottom. So this is going to be an interesting one to grow over the years. Now we've got a variegated raindrop peperomia. This leaf is highly variegated. The rest, just a bit of variegation on them. I don't find that the variegation is very stable on this plant. But I have an idea to cut it, do a little chop on this one, and see if that will encourage the new branching to produce more variegation. And at the same time, I can save the top cutting and continue with the plant. I'm going to think about it and see. I'll probably wait for a couple more leaves to see if it produces more variegated leaves, because that initial leaf was lovely. I'd love to have more variegated leaves like that. The Begonia ferox, it's the newest little baby to my collection. Just lovely. I got this one from Jamestown Milk. They were at the Ontario Plant Show on the weekend. As one viewer said, the leaves are tactile. That's a very good description. Just lovely. Looks like a new leaf, a new little leaf right there. Over here as well. I think this plant has grown since being under the grow light. Now I understand that they like it moist and they don't like to dry out too much. Definitely need to repot this maxillaria. It's falling over. The Begonia ferox, so they like it moist and they don't like direct sun, but under the grow light it gives them just the right amount of light to make them happy and want to push out growth. A really beautiful plant. I'm glad to have that in my collection. Now, just before ending, I wanted to show you what I use for feed on my plants. So Super Thrive, I'll use a few drops in the water every watering. And I also put a few drops of this Grow Big. It's for tomatoes and veggies, but I find that it works well for all my plants. And that's the concentration on it, 3 to 6. And it has a lot of micronutrients like copper, zinc, manganese, calcium, magnesium. So I find that it's a nice balanced fertilizer for my plants. And it works good. Look, veggies, tomatoes, roses, herbs, berries, orchids. So I'm covered with these two in my water, just a weak solution of fertilizer in the water every time I water. Now, I also have the Osmocote, which I pick up in the US. I always stop at the Home Depot, Rona, and pick up some fertilizer. This one's indoor and outdoor. 11 essential nutrients. So that's really good. So it's good for your veggies and your garden. Lots of micronutrients. That's it for the houseplant tour plant, friends. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment, and follow me on Instagram at Life of Bellina.